There's going to be some prime real estate in the transfer portal for a quarterback. Who's LSU getting? We're talking about that and more today on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. And welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in, as always. And it is a fun time to be in the transfer portal for QBs, especially with some of the more recent additions with DJ Lagway, Dylan Raiola, Brendan Sorsby. Those guys have entered the transfer portal over the last, 24 to 48 hours. But it's just... And that's not even counting potentially Bryce Underwood. He could very well be another guy that's going to be in consideration to enter the transfer portal. And that's a lot of other top flight guys that are going to be in the transfer portal that I think a lot of guys want to have. Because at the end of the day, if you're LSU especially, Lane Kiffin's got to come out the gates firing. You don't have Nussmeier coming back for 2026. It seems like Jawan Johnson is kind of fence sitting right now, wanting to see where things are. And then you throw in, you're not necessarily sure where exactly this team is right now when it comes to the quarterback room. And again, we can be talking about Trinidad Chambliss as well. He's a name that's being mentioned in discussions to come over. It's going to be there's a lot of moving parts here. But what I really am interested in which quarterback do I think could be the starting QB1 in 2026? Because LSU's success the last several years has been in the transfer portal getting really good quarterbacks. Not necessarily elite, but very good quarterbacks. This goes back even before Joe Burrow, before Joey B. Joe Cool himself took over. In fact, it was just about 5-6 years ago on Tuesday, where we were kind of basking in the glow of Joe Burrow winning the Heisman Trophy, the first one to do so since Billy Cannon. This goes back to Danny Etling, and people want to kind of denigrate Danny whenever you compare him to a lot of the QBs that have taken over the helm since the mid-2010s, the early Ed Ogeron tenure. At the end of the day, I think we have to respect what Danny Etling did. He was a very serviceable quarterback that was helped by some really good wideouts, some really good dogs at that position, because there was a time LSU was wide receiver you. Now, flipping the script is Joe Burrow, Jayden Daniels, the last two transfer quarterbacks wound up being Heisman Trophy winners and guys that have gotten towards the top of the league. Now, Joe Burrow and Jayden Daniels, more likely than not, are going to be MIA from the NFL playoffs this year. But I think that's just because, well, one, Jayden Daniels, the injuries have gotten to him. Same with Joe Burrow. But it just feels like there's going to be, in the case of Jayden Daniels, it was very much a big surprise. So there was going to be that come down, that medicine season, as one of my good friends in the media game, Kevin Foote, would love to say. But you look at all the stuff going on behind the scenes, it seems like LSU and Ole Miss's coaching staff are going through some kind of trade. I don't know what it is, but it is intriguing. I feel like Trinidad Chambliss absolutely could jump ship to go over to sit alongside Lane Kiffin, to be part of the Lane train. That would be a massive coup. That said, I think if you're LSU, there's only two names you're really wanting if the Trinidad Chambliss thing does not happen. It's DJ Lagway. I feel like he could be a really good QB under Lane Kiffin. Lane has been shown himself to be a very good offensive-minded head coach. And he was able to turn a guy that was pretty much playing JUCO ball and turn him into one of the most electrifying players in the SEC. Didn't win the Heisman, but he looked pretty damn good. I would be intrigued to see what happens to him over the next 48 to 72 hours, depending what happens in the game on Saturday against Tulane. We'll be talking about that a little bit more as we get closer to the weekend. But I do have to say, this is interesting because right before I was going to go ahead and tape today's edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast, I saw this, and it revolves around one person, and that is Frank Wilson. We talked about him a lot last week about whether or not Frank Wilson was going to still be a part of the Tigers front office and the staff. Well, it looks like he's going to make the move over to Ole Miss. This is coming from On Three's Pete Nakos. I had to make sure this wasn't No Three Sports on X. I had to double, triple check to make sure that was the right name that was used because there's no guarantees these days. People like to kind of have these troll accounts to throw you off base. I think this is legit. Again, was at Ole Miss back in 2005 as a running backs and special teams coach, head coach at UTSA and McNeese State, went back to LSU to be part of the staff of Brian Kelly. And it seemed like his future was in question. We talked about it a lot, whether or not he was going to stay aboard. Now, again, a lot of things can change between now and the Tigers bowl game on the 27th. But if Frank Wilson exits stage left, what happens next? That is going to be the $1 million question a lot of us are going to be asking over the next few weeks. Is you lose a guy like that. And you also lose somebody like Austin Thomas. He's going to be making the jump over to Ole Miss. So it seems like you're seeing some LSU coaching staff and Ole Miss coaching staff are moving like ships in the night for one reason or another. And I think, the Austin Thomas situation is what it is. Some people have their thoughts about him. I don't know him from Adam and Eve, so I'm going to withhold my judgment on what he did for the LSU football program. But I think losing Frank Wilson, regardless of what you think about what the run game was in 2025, I think that's more a damnation on the head coach, Brian Kelly, not on Frank Wilson. But losing him is going to be more impactful than any other coach that you lost during this #silly season. You got to keep Blake Baker. That's great. But I think Frank Wilson, he is going to start poaching some high quality recruits. Maybe not for the class of 2026. Seems like all the hay's in the barn there. But 2027 and beyond, there's going to be a little bit of a war going on between state lines. I firmly believe that is what's going to happen between Oxford and Baton Rouge. There's going to be some sniping going on. And again, they're going to have to compete with the Alabamas of the world. There's going to be a battle when it comes to the resources. And I feel like LSU 9 times out of 10 could win that. But I firmly believe we're going to see something change before too long over at Ole Miss, and they're going to have to hurry up and compete by hook or by crook in some cases to get some NIL deals in place to make sure these guys sign on the dotted line. That's just how I see things in the here and now. And we'll flip it on over. We got to talk about what's going on with the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Big game tonight. They're taking on the Blue Hens of Delaware. Never in a million years did I expect to see the University of Delaware be involved in bowl season. Both teams sitting at 6-6, and it's over in Mobile, Alabama, the 6-8 Ventures Bowl. And this is kind of interesting. Is And whenever I think about this, the 17th of December is probably one of the most memorable days in Louisiana Raging Cajuns history. Because the Cajuns had Mark Hudspeth first year, bring him to an 8-4 record. And then the Brett Baer kick, one of the most iconic moments, I'd say top 5, hands down, most iconic moments in Cajuns football history. Kicking that through the uprights to walk off for the win. Great moment. No doubt in my mind. That said, I am very intrigued about this game. Mainly because of what we saw during this back end of the season. Because go back to, the midway point of the season, it felt like the Cajuns just were dead as a doornail in a sense, right? Go back to after you lose your starting quarterback in the first game of the season. Just not a great start at all. Then you get mollywopped by Mizzou and you lose by 3 to Eastern Michigan. Somehow you turn it around, you beat Southern Miss, and then you turn it around after 2 losses to 2 good teams, one in the playoff and James Madison, and then Southern Miss, who just had to hire another head coach. Seems like they're going into the Arkansas State route back in the mid-2010s, if you remember that time frame. But you started off a pretty substantial win streak over in Mobile, winning 4 straight and, more importantly, securing a bowl appearance for the 8th straight year. Not many teams in all of college football can say they did that. And here's the thing. I feel like bowl games aren't meaningless. I feel like people need to acknowledge that these bowl games still mean something to a certain extent, right? You look at what this Cajuns program is and what they've done. And the Coach Des era has been pretty good, right? He's been fun. That said, 0-3 in bowl games, not counting 2021, when they won the New Orleans Bowl with a once-in-a-lifetime quarterback leading the way. That was a great moment. But you've lost 3 straight, right? And you were 6-7. And I'm going to go ahead and, I know you can't see this, but I'll do the hand motion, 6-7. I don't think you want to be 6-7 for the 3rd time in the last 4 years. I know that there's no doubt in my mind, the front office at UL doesn't want to see that. They're getting paid pretty nice to make the trip over to Mobile, Alabama. They could have easily opted out. I mean, the university has had a $50 million deficit they've been chipping away at. If not for the money that they got for being in a bowl game and also the additional revenue coming in because JMU made the college football playoff, I feel like more likely than not, they would have opted out. I could be completely wrong here. But that kind of makes the point even more relevant that they deserve to have a chance at winning this game. I think Delaware stands as good of a chance as any to win that ball game. I feel like they can. But they're going to have to show me they have the ability to do just that against a Delaware team that kind of, again, I didn't even know they were eligible to be in a bowl game because it feels like Delaware Blue Hens screams like a Division II type team. But here we are. It's intriguing to see what's happening with this team. And I feel like we talked about this very early on in the run of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. I felt like Coach Des, because you got to the Sun Belt Conference Championship game, you lost that, and you lost in the New Mexico Bowl, is what it is. 10-4. It's something to be proud of. But I feel like losing a fourth straight bowl game, even though it doesn't mean a hill of beans compared to maybe what it was 10 years ago. Some people complain about there being too many. I just feel like if I'm Dr. Brian Maggard, and if I'm the university, that hot seat gets turned up, not scalding, but it will go up a couple degrees as we approach the 2026 season. Because 6-6 in the regular season, 6-7, 6-7 over the course of a season, that's not going to help you at all. That's not going to help you achieve your goals. Again, nothing against Dez. I like the guy. He just was put in the position to maintain the culture, did a pretty decent job at maintaining it, but he's got to elevate it just a little bit more to get this program towards the top, because it feels like they're getting left behind to a certain extent by programs like Troy that are starting to kind of come back into the relevance. Southern Miss, JMU, especially now that JMU's got your former head coach, Billy Napier. There's just a lot of things that we're going to have to see over the next couple of days when the Cajuns play Delaware, and then we kind of start to look forward to 2026 and everything that's been going on with this team. I feel like that seat, if they lose this game tonight, that hot seat is going to go up at least a couple degrees. Appreciate you listening in to the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. We'll be back tomorrow to recap that game. I feel like the Cajuns do win it, and so much more. Make sure you keep it locked to the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast.